4. Just as I stepped onto that train, a stranger yanked me back hard. Did your wife buy those tickets? She asked. I nodded. Her expression darkened instantly. Then come with me. 4. There's something you have to see. I had no idea that whatever waited ahead wouldn't just stop me from boarding that train. It would destroy her life forever. My name is Daniel Mercer, 38 years old, 4. Structural engineer from Seattle, Washington. Claire and I had been married 11 years. She was the kind of woman people trusted instantly. Warm smile, easy laugh, remembered everyone's birthday. 4. I'd loved her, without question, without doubt, without hesitation. Never once thought I had a reason not to. That Tuesday morning in March, she surprised me with a weekend trip to Portland. 4. Packed my bag herself, kissed my cheek at the door. You've been so stressed lately, babe. You need this. I drove to King Street Station, for smiling like a man who had absolutely no idea his entire world was sitting on a fault line. One small tremor away from total collapse. 4. She said she'd meet me at the platform. She never showed. I figured traffic. Claire was always running late. The departure board flashed. 8:49. 1 minute left. I grabbed my bag, moved toward the door. 4. Stepped forward. And that's when her hand grabbed my arm. I turned around annoyed, ready to argue. But one look at the stranger's face, and every word died in my throat. She wasn't panicked. 4. She wasn't confused. She was certain. And somehow that was worse. Her name was Sandra Cole. She walked fast, head down like someone who didn't want to be seen. I followed her through the station, 4 past the ticket counters, through a side door into a small coffee shop tucked behind the main concourse. She chose a corner table, sat with her back to the wall. Who are you? I asked, 4 sliding into the seat across from her. And how do you know my wife? Sandra wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. She didn't look at me immediately. 4. She looked at the table like she was choosing her next words the way you'd choose steps across a frozen lake. 4. I work at Pacific Northwest Insurance, she finally said. Corporate Investigations Division. I stared at her. Okay, Mr. Mercer. She looked up. Your wife took out a life insurance policy on you 14 months ago. $2.4 million. The noise of the coffee shop seemed to disappear completely. That's not unusual, I said slowly. Couples do that. 4. They do. Sandra nodded. But they don't usually purchase a one-way train ticket for their husband, reroute it through a third-party account to hide the purchase history. 4. Then report that same husband missing before the train even departs. My mouth went dry. She filed a missing persons report. My voice came out strange. Hello. 4. Sandra slid a printed document across the table. I looked down. Claire had filed it at 8:30 a.m., 20 minutes before my train was even scheduled to leave. 4. I sat there staring at that document for a long time. My wife had reported me missing before I was even gone, before the train departed, before anything had actually happened. 4. She hadn't waited, hadn't hesitated, had walked into a police station at 8:30 in the morning and told them her husband had disappeared. That wasn't panic. That was a script. She planned this. 4. I said quietly. It wasn't a question. Sandra nodded slowly. We started investigating 3 weeks ago. A claims pattern flagged her account automatically. Mr. Mercer, Claire isn't the first. 4. I looked up. What do you mean she isn't the first? Sandra opened a folder on the table between us. Inside were 2 photographs, 2 different men, both smiling. Both looked like ordinary guys, for the kind you'd see coaching Little League or grilling burgers on a Sunday afternoon. James Holloway, Portland, 2019. Sandra tapped the first photo. Died in a hiking accident. His wife collected 1, 4, 8 million. She moved to the second photo. Marcus Webb, Spokane, 2021. Drowned during a fishing trip. His wife collected 2.1 million. I couldn't breathe. Both wives used the same insurance broker. 4, Sandra said. Same policy structure, same claim timeline. She paused. 4. Same broker Claire used 14 months ago. The room felt like it was tilting. Those men, I said carefully, their wives are currently serving life sentences, Sandra finished quietly. 4. I thought about Claire packing my bag that morning, folding my shirts, kissing my cheek. You need this, babe. My stomach turned completely inside out. We need to contact the police, I said. For pushing back from the table, Sandra put her hand up. Already done. Detective Ray Hull from Seattle PD is expecting us in 40 minutes. But Mr. Mercer, she hesitated. Before we go, there's something else you need to know. I sank back into my chair. There was more. Of course, there was more. The insurance broker connecting all 3 cases, Sandra said carefully. 4. His name is Trevor Walsh. Operates out of Bellevue. Very polished, very careful. She slid another photograph across the table. I recognized him instantly. Trevor Walsh had been at our wedding. 4. He'd sat at table 7, laughed at my best man's speech, shook my hand at the reception, and told me Claire was the best thing that had ever happened to me. 4. He's her cousin, I said numbly. She introduced him as her cousin. Sandra's expression told me everything. They're not related, she said quietly. 4. We ran backgrounds on everyone connected to Claire last month. Trevor Walsh and Claire have no family connection whatsoever, but their financial records. Sandra opened another page. 4. Show 14 transfers over the past 2 years. Small amounts, careful amounts, nothing that would trigger automatic flags individually. I thought about every family dinner Trevor had attended, every Christmas, for every Thanksgiving, sitting at my table, eating my food, smiling at me from across the room while they quietly built the architecture of my death. How long? I asked. My voice was barely recognizable. 4. How long has she been planning this? Sandra looked at me steadily. Mr. Mercer, we think it started before she married you. Some information doesn't just shock you. It restructures everything. 4. Every memory, every moment, every smile you thought was real. Like someone hands you a different lens, and suddenly 11 years of your life looks completely unrecognizable. 4. Claire hadn't fallen in love with me. She'd selected me. Detective Ray Holt was a quiet man. Late 40s, tired eyes that had seen too much for too long. 4. He listened to everything Sandra presented without interrupting once. Then he leaned back in his chair and looked at me directly. Mr. Mercer, I want to be completely honest with you. 4. What we have right now is strong, but not yet enough for an arrest. The missing persons report alone isn't criminal. The insurance policy alone isn't criminal. 4. Even the financial transfers could be explained away by a decent defense lawyer. So, what do we do? I asked. Hull leaned forward. We let her think it worked. I stared at him. 4. She filed that missing persons report this morning, Hull continued, which means right now she's waiting, expecting a phone call, expecting news. He paused. We need you to disappear, Mr. Mercer, completely. 4. No calls, no contact, no activity on your cards or phone. Let her believe you were on that train. For how long? 72 hours. Long enough for her to activate the next step of her plan. 4. Because there will be a next step. There always is. Hull glanced at Sandra. And when she moves, we'll be watching every second. I sat in that police station chair thinking about Claire at home right now. 4. Waiting, probably checking her phone, probably smiling. They set me up in a safe house 30 minutes outside Seattle. Small place, 2 bedrooms, blinds permanently closed. 4. A young officer named Cooper sat outside in an unmarked car around the clock. Hull had taken my phone, my wallet, my cards to the outside world to Claire. 4. Daniel Mercer had simply vanished somewhere between Seattle and Portland. The first 24 hours were the longest of my life. I sat in that safe house replaying 11 years of marriage like a film reel. 4. Searching desperately for something real. Our first date at that Italian place on Pike Street. The night she cried in my arms after her mother passed. The way she laughed, that specific laugh. 4. Head tilted back, completely unguarded. Had any of it been real, or had I been an audition she'd passed on hour 31? 4. Holt called the safe house landline. She moved, he said simply. Claire had contacted Trevor Walsh 40 minutes after filing the missing persons report, long before she should have known anything. 4. Holt's team had been monitoring Trevor's phone since morning. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. Coded language, careful wording, but the meaning was unmistakable. She was telling him it was done. 4. There's more. Holt said, "We pulled Trevor's financials from this morning at 9:15 a.m., 25 minutes after your train departed." 4. He contacted the insurance company, attempting to begin preliminary claim documentation. My train had barely left the station. They hadn't even waited to confirm I was dead. 4. Daniel Holt's voice was steady. "We have them." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in 2 days. They arrested Claire on a Thursday morning. Holt had wanted everything perfect before moving. 4. Every thread tied, every document signed, every communication between Claire and Trevor time-stamped and verified. He'd spent 72 hours building a case so airtight she'd have nowhere to breathe inside it. 4. I watched it happen from an unmarked van parked 2 houses down. Claire was watering the front garden when the 2 patrol cars pulled up. She straightened slowly, shielding her eyes from the morning sun. 4. For one brief moment, she looked completely ordinary, just a woman in her garden on a Thursday morning. Then she saw the officers walking toward her. Her face changed, not into panic, not into tears. 4. It changed into something I'd never seen in 11 years of marriage. 4. Something cold and calculating that surfaced for just a fraction of a second before she rearranged her expression into convincing confusion. That fraction of a second told me everything I needed to know. 4. The woman I'd loved had never really existed. Trevor was arrested simultaneously at his Bellevue office. Hull told me later he tried to run, or made it, approximately 12 feet before an officer caught him in the parking lot. 4. The insurance broker who'd helped orchestrate the deaths of 2 men couldn't outrun a 40-year-old detective on a Thursday morning. 4. Hull opened the van door afterward and handed me back my phone, my wallet, my cards. "It's over," he said quietly. I looked at our house. The garden Claire had just been watering. 4. The life we'd supposedly built together. "Is it?" I asked. Hull understood what I meant. "The hard part," he said carefully, "is just beginning." The trial lasted 9 days. Claire's lawyer tried everything. 4. Painted her as a confused woman in a troubled marriage. Claimed the insurance policy was routine financial planning. Argued the communications with Trevor were misinterpreted. It was a performance. 4. Polished, desperate, and ultimately pointless. Sandra Cole testified for 4 hours. Detective Holt testified for 3. I sat in that courtroom every single day, not out of anger, not out of hatred. For I sat there because I needed to witness it completely. Every piece of evidence, every document, every phone record laid out in front of 12 strangers who had never met Claire, never seen her smile, or never believed her lies. They deliberated for 6 hours. 4. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, filing false police reports. Claire was sentenced to 22 years. Trevor Walsh received 17. 4. The insurance broker who'd connected all 3 cases. The one who'd helped 2 other women collect on their dead husbands received 25. 4. I stood outside that courthouse afterward in the October cold and just breathed. People always ask me how I feel about it now, whether I'm angry, whether I grieve the marriage, whether I miss her. For honestly, I grieve the idea of her, the woman I thought she was, the life I thought we had. That grief is real and I won't pretend otherwise, but I'm alive. 4. I'm standing in October sunlight outside a courthouse in Seattle, Washington, breathing cold air, heart still beating, for future still intact, because a stranger grabbed my arm at a train station. And I was smart enough to follow